This is one of those videos that I wouldn't have made unless I saw a need to make it, and unfortunately I do see a need to make it. I guess unfortunately is not necessarily the right word, but it seems like most people don't realize that Rage 2 getting announced is really only a good thing for Starfield. If you look at forums, if you look at Twitter, just everywhere, it seems like a bunch of people are complaining about the fact that, oh no, now that Bethesda is working on Rage 2, that means Starfield is less likely to be getting released. In my opinion, that couldn't be farther from the truth, and actually the opposite is true. I think the fact that Rage 2 got announced does make it more likely that a new Starfield may be coming. Not really that much more likely, but maybe like a 1% tick addition. So first, as I try and start off a bunch of these videos off with, let's make a distinction. Bethesda Game Studios is different than Bethesda Softworks. Here's a nice little diagram that breaks it down off of Twitter. I have a link down below to that tweet if you want to check it out. When we talk about Bethesda's E3 conference, what we're talking about is Bethesda Softworks E3 conference. As you just saw by that image, there are a ton of companies under Bethesda Softworks umbrella. They are a publisher and not a developer. One of the companies under Bethesda Softworks umbrella is going to be Bethesda Game Studios, the creators of the Elder Scrolls and the people who have been making the Fallout games as of late. With that in mind, hopefully now you can deduce that even though Bethesda Softworks will be having a Rage 2 game coming out from one of their developers, that doesn't really have any impact on Bethesda Game Studios. Although something quite interesting that actually got leaked by Bethesda themselves yesterday is the developers of Rage 2 are going to be Avalanche and id Software. Rage 1 was only made by id Software. It's really interesting that they're actually having this tandem work done on the second game. And what does that mean? Well, a lot of things seem to be pointing to the fact that Avalanche was the main developer behind it. If you guys don't know, Avalanche is not owned by ZeniMax and not one of the typical companies Bethesda works with. This is actually the first time the two companies are working together on a project. Seemingly, Bethesda Softworks hired Avalanche to create this game, and along the way they got some help from the developers of the original Rage game, that being id Software. Avalanche is known for making the Just Cause series as well as Mad Max. id Software is known for obviously Rage, and then Doom is their most recent and probably most popular release over the past few years. So this kind of mixes things up a little bit. A lot of people making predictions for this E3 didn't think that Avalanche should be in the mix. Bethesda Softworks again is typically working with those same companies from that list I showed you guys earlier. So we expected some new Prey DLC, we expected maybe a Doom 2, Wolfenstein, etc, etc. So what we have to really look at now is what are the implications of id Software working on this? How extensively are they actually working on Rage 2, or rather have they worked on Rage 2? It seems pretty difficult to get a concise answer on this, but more or less what the sentiment is right now, as I kind of suggested before, is that Avalanche was the main developer and id only helped out. So seemingly id Software could also be using a lot of their other people or their other studio to actually work on a different game, that being the Doom 2 that a lot of us suspect to get announced at this coming E3. But either way, the main takeaway here is that Rage got announced before E3. A lot of people are like, oh, it's probably due to the Walmart leaks. Pete Hines actually said no, they were always planning on announcing Rage before their E3 conference. That's really interesting because Rage is, it's not the biggest game in the world, it's not the most popular game, but that's the type of content I would expect for Bethesda to actually be announcing in their E3 conference, not before it. If Pete Hines actually is telling the truth here and they always planned on announcing it beforehand, that means there's hypothetically other things out there that are more deserving to get announced at this E3. Like what I'm saying here is that Rage 2 didn't make the cut for E3. They got into the B team and got announced before E3. So hypothetically, there's an A team out there that is better than Rage 2, at least Bethesda felt that way. For all of us hoping for a new Bethesda Game Studios game, that makes it very exciting. There's been a ton of announcements leading up to E3 that we expected to have at E3. And one thing that I feel like I've been thinking about or suspecting more and more as these announcements have been coming out is actually a remaster or something with Fallout 3. If you guys don't know, I've said it in a few videos now, but Fallout 3's 10-year anniversary is coming later this year. Fallout 3 was massive for Bethesda, and I just really can't picture them doing nothing to celebrate that anniversary. I feel like we're ripe for a remaster. And although I still think it's very unlikely, as we get more announcements, I feel like the likelihood of us getting a Fallout 3 remastered announcement in addition to a Starfield or new AAA game announcement is increasingly likely. As well as just some of these quotes floating around, like Pete Hines saying there's going to be something for everyone. Either way, those are my thoughts on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject down below. Do you think the announcement of Rage 2 actually increases the likelihood of some more exciting announcements being at E3? Or do you think it's nonsense and Bethesda just kind of picked at random what would be at this E3? That's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video, but of course, before we end things off, we actually do have today's psychology fun fact of the day. We're going to talk about another motivation theory this time, and actually I'm going to share a video with all of you. It's a pretty interesting one, and let me just show you a clip of it, and then I'll explain exactly what you're actually seeing.
So she gives a rock to us, that's the task, and we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber.
So more or less, that was a study done with monkeys, as you could hopefully tell. And to these monkeys, whether it just be innate or actually learned, they actually prefer one of those foods to the other. So when one monkey got the worst of the two foods for doing the exact same task as the other monkey, he was pissed about it. This is known as justice theory, and it's the theory of motivation. The idea being that motivation is actually based on perceived fairness. So if you think you are getting paid the same amount or a justified amount for the amount of work you're doing compared to others, then you're going to be motivated to continue doing that work. So some of the interesting implications of this, and these are things that have actually been studied, that actually giving everyone the same bonus is not good. So obviously at a company, people are going to work at different levels, and everyone getting the same $1,000 bonus is actually bad for motivation. People who did a lot of extra work getting the same amount of money as people who didn't do nearly as much work is typically bad for motivation. And at first glance, you might think, okay, it's very obvious why the guy that did a lot of work is pretty pissed about getting the same bonus as the guy that didn't do a lot of work. But a part of the study also suggests that people on the lower end, people that didn't do a lot of work and actually got a bonus for it, also have reductions in motivation as a result. And really the magic solution here is a ratio. So you get compensated based on how much work you do, and that even if your colleague does more work than you and gets more money as a result, most people will still feel fine if they're getting compensated fairly for their level of work. Either way, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. As always, again, I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.